had them on this morning, I figured.
Shake them out.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to the July 23, 2018 Committee of the Whole meeting. Prior to the start of our meeting tonight, if anyone would like to address the City Council on the one item on the agenda, which is the public meeting practices, please feel free to fill out a speaker request form, give it to our Deputy City Clerk, Ruth Scott, who will get it up here and will get you on the agenda. Roll call, please.
Jacobson, Fanouken,
Here.
Markwart,
Here.
Fagan,
Here.
Noriko,
Here.
Verbic,
Here.
Favor,
Here.
Smith,
Here.
7 present.
At 4:50 this afternoon, I got this text message from Alderman Jacobson. I will not make it for Cow, but will be at the regular meeting. And I couldn't resist the temptation. I replied, what an opportunity for the rest of us. So Dave will not be here for the Cow, but will be here for our regular council meeting. There are no items in the Cow meeting tonight, the Committee of the Whole, which are on the regular agenda. First of all, if there's anybody in our audience who'd like to speak to an item not on the agenda, you're free to make a comment now. If not, I'm going to open up our consideration on our one agenda item tonight, and that is public meeting practices. And this should prove to be fairly interesting for those who attend meetings or like to see what the city of DeKalb does in terms of meetings and practices. And I'm going to have our management analyst, Ray Munch, who has worked very hard in providing us some of the background information on this, to lead off the discussion tonight. Ray?
Good evening, Mr. Mayor, Alderman, city staff, and members of the community. This evening, we bring to you for discussion an item at the request of the mayor, and what it is basically a review of the city's public meeting practices that covers both city council meetings and all the city's boards, committees, and commissions. We bring this item to you for discussion on a number of different points. Before we get into that discussion, I ever so briefly want to just give an overview of some of our public meeting practices for the benefit of the community, for those people who maybe don't attend meetings so often or don't have a very good understanding of how public meetings work. As I said, we have public meetings that cover a variety of different topics that are handled by a number of governing bodies. So most people are probably more familiar with the City Council, which is comprised of our Committee of the Whole meetings, which we're currently holding right now, and then our regular City Council meetings. Those are convened on the second and fourth Monday of every month. In addition, the City Council holds quarterly discussion, planning, and visioning meetings. Those meetings can cover a variety of topics. So earlier this year, we had a goal-setting session that was included in those meetings. That would also include our budget workshops and things of that nature that fall into more of that strategic planning type of meeting. In addition to the City Council, the city maintains 14 different boards, committees, and commissions. There are 10 standing boards and 4 ad hoc boards. By ad hoc, we mean they meet as needed. The 10 standing committees meet either monthly or quarterly, depending on the governing body. Most of these boards and committees are established by the city's municipal code. However, it's important to understand that a number of them do operate under state statute. Good examples would be the fire and police pension boards, who, again, they're formulated and established by city code, but they're operating under state laws that establish the police and fire pension codes. Public participation is a very important component of our public meetings. Public comment is accepted at all public meetings. It's a requirement of both state law and the municipal code. It's covered in the Open Meetings Act. What is not specifically governed is some of the ways in which public comment and public participation is handled. So good examples of that are the point during the meeting which public comment is accepted, either at the beginning of the meeting, the end of the meeting, or throughout the meeting in its entirety. Also is length of commentary, and this is something that I'll get into a little bit more as the discussion progresses. As part of our research, one of the things we did was we reached out to a number of other communities and did an informal survey of how they handle some of their meeting practices. And most of what we found didn't really glean anything noteworthy, with the exception of the public participation piece. And what we found here was really every community does a little bit different. So you can see in this table on the screen, in terms of the public comment, we asked people, do you do it at the beginning of the meeting, at the end of the meeting, or all throughout the meeting, as is the current practice for the city of DeKalb. And as you can see, towns were all over the map. There was really no consistent means by which that particular topic is handled. Same with length of public comment. We asked, do you limit public comment at all? If so, is it 3 minutes? Is it 5 minutes? Again, you can see there was significant variation from the different communities that we spoke with. So it's fair to say that there's not necessarily one best way for that, and it's important to keep in mind. Locations of meetings. So public meetings are held in a number of different places. Most public meetings are held at City Hall, either in council chambers or in one of the conference rooms within City Hall. But there are meetings that are held at police headquarters or the airport, depending on the business that's being conducted. Meetings are occasionally held at other locations, so an example would be the library. Earlier this year when the council did a goal-setting session, we utilized one of the public rooms in the library. So it's fairly rare that meetings are held at a location other than one of these three, but it does happen on occasion. This is a topic that has really probably launched this discussion, I guess. And that's what are our practices with regard to video recording and broadcasting of public meetings. Currently, the city live broadcasts city council and committee of the hall meetings and planning and zoning commission meetings. For obvious reason, there's significant public interest in our city council meetings. Planning and zoning meetings are recorded and broadcast because those are more of, I call it like a quasi-judicial proceeding, where there's often public hearings and testimony being provided. So it's important to record that and have a record of that for the future. Finance Advisory Committee meetings are also recorded. They're recorded a little bit differently in that they're not held in this room, so we don't have live broadcast equipment. What we do is we have a camcorder type system where the meeting is recorded, and then later on, usually the following day, that video is uploaded to our YouTube video channel, and it's available for public viewing at that point. All videos that are recorded, whether they're live streamed on channel 14 or YouTube, or like the FAC meeting recorded and uploaded later, are available on the city's YouTube channel for people to view at any point in time. Having given that very brief overview for the benefit of the community, there are 5 considerations that I came up with in speaking with the mayor about this topic, and things that we felt were important to bring forward for a public discussion. And I have those 5 on the screen right now, and I'll kind of walk you through them, but I think this is a point where we can have kind of an open discussion about the feelings on these individual topics. So the first would be, does the current schedule and format of city council meetings meet the needs of the city? What we mean by that is second and fourth Monday, Cow and City Council. Does that work best? There's communities that break up their committee of the whole and city council meetings and do them on alternating Mondays so that you have meetings every Monday of the month. But obviously it takes significantly less time when you are here for a meeting. So that would be a consideration for the council to discuss.
Okay. Okay, so we're gonna go through these now. Is that your?
Yes.
Your suggestion, Ray? I think it's an excellent one. I did print out a copy and made some, mine's sort of a marked up copy, so somewhere along the line within the context of those 5 questions, perhaps my questions will be answered. But so let's take a look at that one. Does the current schedule and the format of our meetings, city council meetings, meet the needs of the city? Any thoughts one way or the other? Alderman Noriko.
I know that there's been some discussion that having the meetings in, the cow precede the city council meeting, and having that meeting begin at 5 means that citizens who work until 5 or a little, around that time have difficulty making the meeting. I could see, having that meeting later if we didn't have so many council meetings that go for like 4 hours. I'm not at my best at 10:30 or 11 o'clock at night, and so I feel somewhat boxed in because of that issue, and holding the meetings, breaking them up and having cow meetings and then city council meetings on alternate Mondays, basically meeting every Monday of the month. I think that's more challenging, at least for me, as an alderman.
Thank you. Alderman Fagan?
I know this council has had utilized cows since I think day one. Are we going to get to the point where we're not going to have or need a cow at that point? And that's my question.
Yeah, I personally like the cows because it gives us the opportunity to do exactly what it is we're doing now, and that is to have some discussion. We're not making any firm decisions.
Right.
We're not voting on anything per se. The problem with cows, committees of the whole, is that with the variety of issues in this community, we could plug any topic that we wanted to into a committee of the whole meeting, in which case, to answer your question, Pat, we would have a cow each and every meeting. And I think we've had a committee of the whole meeting virtually every time that, since I've been
Right.
here. We could, if we wanted to, limit 1 cow a month, so that there would be that one city council meeting that perhaps before which we would not have a committee of the whole.
And I'm not saying about limiting it. I'm just saying will we always have a committee of the whole before every council meeting?
I think given what is our track record presently, yes, we would
Okay.
probably want to do that, or we would probably end up doing that. Alderman Fanouken.
Just, if I may, first of all, to answer Pat's question, in the 5+ years I've been on here now, we've had one every meeting. We did originally have cows when I first came on at 6 and a regular meeting at 7. But as Kate's already stated, we had some very long council meetings, and I know several times before we made the change, we were here to very close to midnight. Not that we haven't done that once or twice since we started at 6. But I think the 5 p.m. for the cow and the 6 p.m. for our council meeting works out well, except when we try and put too much on the cow agenda, or it's a very long topic that needs a lot of discussion. So I think the 5 and 6 overall works pretty well. I know there are some complaints that it does not allow some people to get here for cow, but you try and balance the 2 things out, and that's what we tried to do when we set it at 5 and 6.
Alderman Favor.
I would probably say I would not want to have to to come to a meeting every single Monday. I do agree that the time 5 for the cow, we've had speakers who've come and spoken at the cow because they couldn't come to the meeting due to other obligations as well. So whether they're a student at night or have some other engagement or something like that. So I think there's always going to be somebody's schedule that we're conflicting with. I know that it certainly doesn't, constituents have the opportunity to phone call and to email as well. So, we've gotten feedback that, on their opinion of a topic that might be presented, and we have that opportunity to read some of those comments during the committee of the whole meeting as well. So I'm okay with leaving it where it's at today at 5 p.m.
There seems to be consensus then that what we're doing presently, unless something dramatic comes up, is satisfactory. I do have one question, and that is, in the background material that you put up there, Ray, municipal code calls for the council to host discussion, planning, and vision meetings 4 times per year. These special meetings are to be called at least once a quarter and cannot commence prior to 1 o'clock on their scheduled date. If what you say is true, and I have no doubt to doubt you, but are we saying then that a meeting like this one, or a meeting like a budget workshop, could in fact be that quarterly vision meeting? You suggest that it may be. My question to the council, especially those of you who may have been here longer than I have, does that, if we do that, if we were to call this meeting as one of those special meetings on planning and vision, if in fact it does, great. If it doesn't, does it go against the spirit of where this particular item was put into the municipal code? Alderman Fanouken.
Well, this item was one of Alderman Jacobson's pet projects on the previous council. He, pushed for it to be put in because we were not having the meetings that we are now in terms of the budget workshops. We were doing more of on an annual basis of strategic planning. And I think that, at least in my mind, the budget workshops, because of the discussion we get into, not just financial, I think they meet the spirit of the intent of that part of the code. So, that's the genesis of that.
Yeah. I'm very satisfied that the meetings that we've had where we have discussed long-term vision, long-term planning, et cetera, should fulfill that particular requirement. Alderman Noriko.
As I recall, and Alderman Fanouken can correct me, Alderman Jacobson wanted, to a certain extent, free-form discussions on, what's working in the city, what isn't, how do we see the city, and so forth. The problem I saw with that was, it was free-form. I wasn't sure what the objective was. I needed more structure. I think that, as has already been mentioned, the budget workshops, as they're now structured, provide structure and provide some direction and focus for our discussions.
Good.
And so they meet the spirit of it.
Alderman Verbeek.
And I would like to see perhaps agenda items or cow items be aligned with our goals. So as they are published on our agenda, how do each of the items that we're discussing align with the goals that we've set forth?
And you're suggesting that could be done in what manner?
Marking on the agenda that this particular item is aligned with this particular council goal.
Oh, okay. That's interesting. I had not given that thought, but that would give us almost a scorecard, if you will, of how we're aligning with our own goals and strategies.
Yes.
Yeah, good. Any other thoughts on this particular question? Okay, good. Ray, would you reiterate number 2?
Yeah, to the second point, talked about the fact that the city has 14 boards, commissions, and committees. So the point for discussion would be, do the topics being addressed and the advice being given to council by those committees, do those cover relevant topics? Are we hitting the topics that we should be hitting with our boards and committees? Are there things that are missing? It's important to revisit these every once in a while and make sure that the needs are being fulfilled for the city.
Interesting question. Comments? Alderman Noriko.
I'd like to get clarification on the distinction between a board, a committee, and a commission. Is there a distinction?
Might defer to City Attorney Frieders on that. Is there a legal distinction?
No, for purposes of OMA, it really doesn't matter what you call the public body. If it meets the category of falling into public body, they're all going to be treated the same. Some of them have a different title as recognized by law. For example, our building code talks about a board, as do all international building codes. The commission, Planning and Zoning Commission, that aligns with Illinois law with regard to the exercise of authority by a planning commission. But functionally, the names are interchangeable.
Okay, thank you.
Good. Alderman Verbeek.
I would echo the same sentiment with our boards and commissions about their work and is it aligned with our goals? So what are our marching orders for those committees and commissions, and what could be more productive work toward the ideas that we have in mind?
Alderman Fanouken.
Well, you know, I also think that particularly with some of those boards and commissions, that they'll bring ideas to us too. I know particularly the Environmental Commission over the years has come forward with the wind energy ordinance, or, you know, they've done so much of the groundwork and legwork, for example, on the native plant ordinance that we're gonna see. So I think they play an important role in not just doing a lot of that legwork so that staff doesn't have to do so much and we don't have to do so much, but also in bringing forward other ideas too.
Alderman Noriko.
I would just like to emphasize the importance is, I think the mayor has been making efforts to expand the diversity of the committee membership. I think that's one way to get people interested in service to the city, you know, perhaps as alderman or mayor. It gets some new blood in, it gets some younger blood in. I think it's really important to take a look at just a wide variety of recruitment sources.
Yeah, I've been excited at the positive response from folks, new folks who
Yeah, and that's been good.
would like to join a board or commission. And I have been very, very proactive in trying to, with your help, and I really commend all of you for making suggestions as to who might staff boards and commissions. But yeah, I think gender, racial, diversity, all that stuff comes into play. Yeah, you know, and you know, we're going to have a little turnover as people move and decide that it may be a little bit more than what they had suspected. Since I've been on the council, what I have found is that it is so important to have a good staff liaison and a council liaison to most of our boards and commissions. I'm going to use Pat Fagan as an example. Pat, you have stepped up and have done a remarkable job on our Economic Development Commission. You know, and I appreciate that. Mike, you on Finance Advisory. And so what I've tried to do is to get some of our city councilmen involved more intimately and staff has done a fine job. One of the suggestions given to me was, and whenever I've said, well, maybe we need this commission or that commission, and staff reminds me that it takes some staff time, because since these are boards and commissions, they do require somebody to take minutes, et cetera, et cetera. So I think whenever we are talking about devising a new commission or board, that we have to keep that in mind. So those are good points. Alderman Verbeek?
And Mayor, as you and I have discussed, the possible appointment of perhaps 2 high school age students and/or 2 young adult worker or college age people to get more of those ideas to us, that, not pointing to our age or anything, but how we can better relate with those opportunities that could be presented for our youth.
That's a good, yeah, that's a good thought. As a matter of fact, I've talked to a couple of young people, Mike, since you and I talked about that, and I think we can get that going. It will take a little bit of time.
Sure.
And, you know, to get you know, it's easy for, I think perhaps sometimes for a young person to say, oh yeah, I'll do that, but then, you know, given the choice of cruising with their friends or coming to a whatever meeting might give them a challenge that they didn't see when they first indicated an interest, but that's a good one. Okay, any thought on that? Okay, let's go to that third question then,
The
Ray.
third point for discussion would relate to public participation, and do we have any strong preference for how public participation is handled? And again, just to recap, our current practice is that we accept public participation throughout the meeting as particular agenda items are called. We also accept public comment that are off topic of the agenda before the meeting. So that would be one point. The other would be time limits are something that often comes up when we have a discussion of public participation.
Yeah. On my marked up copy, I indicated here to myself that the municipal code does not state where specifically public comment must be placed on the agenda. I like some structure, either having it before. I like the idea of giving folks the ability to discuss something and talk about something that's not necessarily on the agenda. The placement of that so far seems to be working. I guess it was something that has occurred over the last year or so, and that is that we've tried to allow a staff person to make a presentation on an item, and then we involve the public before we discuss it, because I think that gives us a better idea of how folks are thinking about a particular issue. So, but let's open it up. What do you think? Public participation. Are we pleased with what we're seeing, what we are hearing, et cetera? Alderman Fagan.
I think the format that we've got now, the open participation and the comments that they can bring in, I think it's set up very well. I think there should be a time restraint on comment. We've got people that can talk for a minute. We've got other people, and we do have to put a time limit on it. I've heard a lot of 3-minute, but I also know that I've seen people up here at the podium that trying to express their convictions on a certain issue, and 3 minutes isn't enough for them. I couldn't see going any more than 5, but I think we should have a time restriction on people speaking, and I think it should be done for everyone. And rather than didn't give the person 5, cut them off at 5, and he takes another 5, or she takes another 5, and didn't, needs the extra minutes. We can't do that. We just have to have it well structured. That's it.
Yeah, I'll have a comment on that, but Alderman Noriko.
I was going to vote in favor of 3 minutes. I can see that there are times that people truly are passionate about a subject and feel that they need 5 minutes. But typically there are other people also trying to speak, and we're trying to absorb all of that. And I think in fairness to everyone, 3 minutes is appropriate. And I can't recall if the public participation request form indicates 3 minutes on it, does it? Or?
In lieu of having that clock that we've all seen where we wind it, to 3 minutes and then have it go off, I've used my stopwatch here, and I have been very subjective as to when I cut Dwayne Brown off and when I don't. It's simply, if he's in the middle of something that makes some sense and I see he's gonna go to 3:30, I probably have allowed, and I'm gonna allow that. I'm not gonna say, hey, you're at 3 minutes. On the other hand, as you know, I have politely tried to say, folks, you're at 3 minutes or 4 minutes or something, try to wrap it up. So, I, to your point, Pat, yeah, I think as long as we don't allow someone to abuse that 3-minute plateau, I think we're in pretty good shape.
Yes.
Would you agree with that? Yeah, Alderman Verbeek?
Yeah, and Mayor, I applaud how you invite people that raise their hands, for example. You ask them to come up to the podium at various points of meetings. I really like that.
Good. Alderman Markwart?
Yeah, I think we should stick to the 3 minutes, mainly because so often 3 minutes does become 5 minutes, you know, or stretch. If we go 5 minutes, then pretty soon you're at 10 minutes, and so on. So I think the 3 minute would be the limit, and I prefer the way that we currently structure it. Well, we have just open discussion, public participation, and then on the various items. If we wanted the municipalities that do it at the end, those are mean places. Because, I mean, you go through and you vote, and then you have everybody talk at the end. What?
Yeah, yeah.
I just don't see
Yeah, I
how
think
that
it's-
works, because at that point, who cares what you say, you know?
Yeah, it's
So
worked out
that's-
pretty well, I think. So the consensus I hear is that, for the most part, our public participation, where we place it, how we place it, how we administer it is pretty good. I think it behooves me especially to remind folks prior to a discussion that 3 minutes is what we're looking at. And I'll try my best to allow someone to finish their thought or their sentence. So we'll move along. Okay. If there is no other discussion on that, let's go to question number 4.
Okay, question number 4 deals with the location of public meetings. So, as I stated, most of our meetings are held here in City Hall. There are several meetings that are held at the police department or at the airport. Typically, those meetings deal with business that have something to do with that location. So, a very easy example is airport advisory board meetings are held at the airport. Police pension meetings are at the police department. Police and fire commission meetings are at the police department. So usually there's some connection to the business at hand and the location of the meeting. That said, the question has been raised, should all meetings be held at City Hall? Is there a reason that an airport advisory board meeting can't be held at City Hall? So we're looking for discussion on the part of council as to that point.
Good. Anybody have any thoughts on that? Are we satisfied with how things are transpiring? Alderman Fagan?
I've got a question on the finance committee. They have their meetings held at the police department, don't they?
They do.
Why do they not have it here? Is there a reason?
So my understanding, the history of that situation was previously they were held here in council chambers. And at some point, I believe it was in early 2017 or late 2016, there was a discussion had, and it was actually the decision of the FAC to move those meetings to the police department based on the room size and the way the room could be configured. Because typically when they did their meetings in council chambers, it was on the tables, on the floor. And I think there was a feeling that that community room in the police department provided a better venue for that type of setup, where they weren't operating off a dais. So that's my understanding of
Right.
the history of that.
Yeah, Mike, you were on the Finance Advisory Committee, and now you are a council liaison. Do you have any thought on that?
The space at the PD is working very well. And it's great that those are recorded and available for the public thereafter. I agree it lends itself to the types of meetings that we conduct, and have not really had any input on, I I guess, needing them live broadcast per se, as long as they are available on YouTube thereafter.
Alderman Fanouken?
Well, and also, one of the ad hoc, the Annie Glidden North Task Force, mostly we've met out at the county building here on Annie Glidden because of the size of the room, the size of the committee. And then the setup there allows us to have a better committee setup meeting than it would be possible to do in this room, for example.
Are we satisfied then that so far where we are is something that there's seems to be some consensus on? Okay. Item 5.
To sort of go along with what Alderman Verbeek said, 4 and 5 could really be paired together, I suppose, because the location of the meeting does play a role in whether it's video recorded. So as I mentioned, currently, City Council and Committee of the Whole meetings are obviously live broadcasts on Channel 14 and streamed through YouTube. And then our Planning and Zoning Commission meetings as well. Finance Advisory Commission meetings are tape recorded, if you will, and uploaded to YouTube later for public consumption. But other than that, our public meetings are not typically video recorded in any way. So the question was raised, should all public meetings be video recorded? Should some additional meetings be recorded, but not necessarily all? So that would be the point for discussion on this.
Okay, any discussion on that particular question? Alderman Orico?
I can see that perhaps there would be a specific topic that there would be greater public interest. For example, with the Citizens Environmental Commission, the discussion on the native plants, weed ordinance, whatever we're calling it at this point. I'm wondering if there could be some provision so that if a commission chair had information ahead of time, in other words, he had several committee members and that person was also getting significant public response, then a request could be made, for holding the meeting here, and of course publicizing that appropriately and then recording it. I do realize, however, I think as noted in our summary, that there really isn't a budget for significant additional meetings. And so if we do think that there might be X number of additional meetings requested during the year, say 5 or something, what that would add to the budget request.
Yeah, I think that's a good point. We have had some discussion at the staff level about the need to really upgrade our equipment, the equipment in the back that assists in the Channel 14 and the feed to YouTube, et cetera. And what we've seen in here, we've made some improvements over the past year in in this particular room and the audio visual. But we really need to upgrade that. In addition, anytime you add additional personnel costs to filming or to videotaping, it does in fact do that. It adds to the bottom line. So what I suggested is that as we look at Channel 14 specifically, and as we look at Comcast and our franchise agreement with those folks, that we see what perhaps other communities are doing, how they might give us some assistance in whatever form that might be as it relates to our upgrading of our equipment back here, and see what other communities are also doing. So that's a topic that certainly we will continue to address. But what I hear tonight is that this city council feels, in a general sense, fairly pleased with with our meeting practices, our transparency, our ability to engage our public, our ability to conduct meetings that are in fact user-friendly for all, including we sitting up here and folks sitting in the audience. So I feel good. Before I close the meeting, does anybody have any further comment? Does anybody from the audience have any further comment? Bessie, do you, our former mayor?
Thank you for that flexibility.
You're welcome.
That's what I like about you. You're flexible.
Well, as was mentioned earlier, Bessie, we allow folks to make a comment because we
think that's
really feel very, very strongly that public input is important.
Absolutely, it's long overdue, as you well know. I'm really generally pleased at the way you conduct the meetings. I think you're very flexible on the minutes, the amount of time people, have to speak, and you should be flexible on that. 3 minutes, that's a good guidepost, but if people have other things to say and so on, you can be very, very flexible on that, and that's good. It's a good thing. Also, the way you're structured here for public participation at the beginning for items not on the formal agenda, that's a good thing. And then people get to sign up for the other. But on the form, it says that visual aids cannot be used. I was wondering what the reasoning for that is. Why visual aids cannot be used by a speaker type of thing. It does say that on the form, just a curiosity of mine. And on some of the boards and commissions, there is a spot where public participation can be invoked, but it's not clear whether it's for things not on the agenda or if that's the only time you can speak on anything that is on the agenda, which is kind of awkward because you can't really participate in, let's say, the library board, that especially when we had some controversies there, it became difficult to really speak to points, or on other boards and commissions. If you can, do you see what I'm saying? They should have the public participation, but then there should be a part in their agenda where people can speak on specific items that are on their particular agendas. Definitely liaisons, I like what I hear about that. If you have council liaisons, that helps the flow of information going back and forth. And it gives the boards and commissions, the people on the boards and commissions, a feeling that they really are being listened to because they are devoting their time and talent for nothing, to help to serve the mayor and council. I'd love to see the more participation on the planning commission from the park district and the school district, a liaison seat from each of those entities to, again, help the lines of communication and that very important body because it has to do with building and those types of things. Hopefully, you can move towards videotaping all meetings at some point in time, maybe not tomorrow or the next year, but hopefully that will be an ultimate goal. That moves towards your ultimate goal, Mayor, of as much transparency, as possible, which is a good thing. It's a positive thing. So, and I'd like to see more meetings here in this facility. And we also have a facility across the street too that isn't being utilized. So, what else? It would be helpful too if on our website, whenever we get that properly in line, would include who is, for all boards and commissions, who is actually on those boards and commissions with some kind of contact information for those
We have
folks.
those listed now as who are on the commissions, is that correct? But we don't have the
I'm not sure,
contact.
it was a hit and miss before,
Mhm.
so I don't know. If you look at other websites from other municipalities, they have like pictures of people and even an email address, not a personal email address, but a city email address where, like, if I was on a particular board or commission and somebody wanted to connect with me, they could do that. So, that is also, it's kind of you have to hunt to see who's on a particular board and commission. That's not good.
Okay.
or
One-
that could be improved.
And one thing that you find interesting, I think Mark Thorson, our IT director, may have a comment on this at the end of the next meeting, although he might like to address it now since we do have a little bit of time. And that is that he's really in charge of unveiling the revamp of our new website.
Yeah.
And one of the things
Good.
that he and I have talked about over the past several months is engaging the public, engaging folks like you, who on more than one occasion have told me it's not the easiest website to navigate. We want to make it easier for folks. And Mark, you might want to have a few words on that website. I know I caught you a little bit off guard. Did I wake you up? Huh?
Yep, not a problem.
Okay.
Absolutely. So I will have a more formal presentation later,
Sure.
but at a later time. But we will be setting up a series of public meetings and workshops to go over the website and to start engaging feedback from the public and make sure that we're hitting the points that are the pain points for any community members that have gone through the website and have had any challenges navigating it. Or if there's missing information, we want to know about it and be able to add that as well. So we've made a series of adjustments as we go along and we get this feedback, and if it's within the parameters of the site's capabilities, we absolutely make those. If not, we make those recommendations to the company and try and get them to include those into the later upgrades and updates. So, but yes, absolutely, we are looking at a series of public meetings and public workshops to be able to gather that feedback and really ensure we're getting all everybody's opinion that is willing to give it to us. And yes, and the project itself actually starts in February of 2019 for the physical upgrade of the site. So we want to get a lot of this prep work done this fiscal year or this calendar year and start that up. So you'll be seeing some information on that, and we will try to arrange the meetings as best as possible and make sure we're getting as many people as possible that can attend. So.
Very good. Thank you, Mark. I appreciate it. Any other comments from the audience? Any other final comments from any council folks? One thing I'd like to mention, Ray, and perhaps you have a few closing comments. The one drawback I've seen, especially for folks in the audience attending a couple of our meetings which are held in here, I'm thinking on some of our budget workshops, although not so much there as our Economic Development Commission, sometimes we can't hear. If you're in the audience, it's difficult to hear. So what I'm going to ask Mark and to see if we could perhaps just get a wireless mic where people could pass it around and we could then hear each other. I've attended to some of the EDC meetings, Pat, and if I'm sitting where Bessie is or back there, I have a difficult time hearing people, especially if they talk real low, you know what I mean? So that would be something, we'll work on that. Okay, thank you very much, I appreciate it. I am going to defer any meeting of our executive session, which I'm told perhaps won't take too long tonight, but I'm going to withhold that, council folks, if I may, so that Dave Jacobson, who will be attending here at our regular council meeting, will be enabled to do that. So we're all set with that. I'd like to ask for a motion to adjourn the Committee of the Whole meeting.
So moved.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? So moved. We are adjourned. City Council will begin promptly at 6 o'clock. Thank you.